Breaking news over the weekend. It was reported that the big, beautiful bill passed, but it didn't actually pass. The big, beautiful bill passed quorum. So the Senate has all these goofy rules where you have to go through these parliamentarian procedures, and you have basically a vote-a-rama. So there are several steps to do this. Number one, you have to do a procedural vote. You have to read the entire bill on the floor. You have up to 20 hours of debate, then a vote-a-rama on amendments, and the amendments are going to be out of control. They are going to be just the most goofy things you could possibly imagine. I want to have a pigeon factory in Wyoming. I want to have an estuary for deer in Tennessee. Every possible giveaway you can imagine. And then they return the bill to pass the House. Now, the House has to be agreeable to all this. This cloture vote is what gets highlighted a lot, because when a bill is getting filibustered, this is the vote it has to clear to not be filibustered. So this is the key. This is the fundamental vote, and it has passed a major hurdle. However, Elizabeth McDonough, that we talked about last week, she was up to her games this last weekend. So here's the big, beautiful bill as it stands. So the remittance tax was 3%, which is a huge part of the big, beautiful bill, which taxes money from America to Mexico and puts a tax on basically illegal immigration. Now, some people will say, well, it weakens the U.S. dollar. That's a fair point. I think it's worth the cost to say that we are going to make a firm stand against the idea that you can come to this country, you can come here illegally, take money, and send it back to your home country. So the Senate has reduced the remittance tax from 3% to 1%. The House raised the debt ceiling up to $4 trillion. The Senate went up to $5 trillion. The child tax credit went from $2,500 per kid down to $2,200 per kid. The SALT deduction cap, honestly, this was the best thing the Senate did over the weekend. I think SALT is a total scam, and SALT is basically a subsidy of blue states. SALT is state and local tax deductions. A lot of people from California and New York are going to be emailing us because they're big fans of SALT. SALT allows states that are dysfunctional with big pension funds, with unregulated teacher unions, to be able to have these proven failure of policies over periods of time continue. And so this went from a $40,000 permanent SALT deduction in the House to a $10,000 temporary SALT deduction. Now, whether or not we're still going to get Mike Lawler and the SALT caucus to vote for this in the House, that remains to be seen. The senior tax deduction went from $4,000 up to $6,000. Now, here are some of the things that were removed by the Senate Parliamentarian. Some of this is goofy, but honestly, some of this is really important. The defunding of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau removed from the Parliamentarian. $1.4 billion in pay cuts to the Federal Reserve staff. How is that not budgetary? Can someone explain to me how that is not reconciliation, how that is not spending? What is she judging this based on out of? The elimination of the Office of Financial Research, she's keeping that. Notice I'm saying she's keeping as if she's some sort of office holder. That like she's in charge of the legislative agenda of President Trump. So she is literally calling these shots. Now the Senate can override them. I think they should entertain that. The acceleration of Medicaid provider tax cuts? Nope. The dissolution of Public Company Accounting Oversight Board? Nope. The Crenshaw Amendment, which is banning gender-affirming care under Medicaid, that is staying. The restrictions of non-citizens immigrant health care coverage. Now, I think that actually got figured out in some sort of wording, but a ban on illegals getting food stamps, that remains. A repeal of the EPA 2026 vehicle emissions is removed. Mandate for USPS to sell electric vehicles, that got removed. Removal of a silencer regulation under the NFA, that got removed. That one I can understand. That's hardly budgetary. An expansion of Pell Grants for short-term workforce, that got removed. But here are the major wins that got kept. And look, the parliamentarian, Elizabeth McDonough, she just went through and she took like a bat like this and she said, nope, 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 nope. And that is Elizabeth McDonough right there, who basically was just calling shots over this entire bill. The Senate can decide to overrule Elizabeth McDonough. Let me be clear. An unelected Senate staffer should not be mentioned on the Charlie Kirk Show, ever. That should be just a rule. On national radio, on our program, we should not be spending time about Elizabeth McDonough. I bet she has great table manners. I bet she's very charitable. I bet she's a wonderful person. She's a Harry Reid appointee. She's helped Democrats. She's helped Republicans before, stopped down big legislation. But at this point, The fact that we are even talking about Elizabeth McDonough as if she's some sort of power source in the Senate, no one voted for her. She was not even Senate confirmed. It's like this weird workaround. She is gumming up the works, and the Senate can override her. And let me tell you, the Senate should not override. The silencer thing, obviously I care about that. I'm super pro Second Amendment, but that's a reach. That shouldn't have been in the bill. I get that. But this is what should be in there. Ban food stamps for illegal immigrants? Yes. Override McDonough on banning SNAP benefits for undocumented immigrants, or they say undocumented, for illegals. That is worth the fight. If you want to talk about a place where it's willing to cast away Senate decorum, and we have Mark Wayne Mullen, I'm going to ask him this question directly, that when if we are giving food stamps to illegals, that is a great fight to pick to overrule the Senate Parliamentarian. And so the components that are kept in the bill are also significant. We keep the Trump tax cuts, $2,200 per child tax cut. We have deductible income for workers up to $25,000 in tip income, up to $12,500 in overtime income. We keep all the border stuff basically. It's funny, all the new spending, you could spend as much new money as you want in this process. McDonough's fine spending new money, but it's very hard to cut old spending. The bill hits hundreds of things, literally. Hopefully most are good. We're still reading the whole bill. The most key thing about this is that this is a means to deliver on Trump's campaign promise. And in America, people should be able to get what they voted for. We get 1,875 new ICE agents, 2,500 next year, $600 million from our recruiting and hiring support, $1 billion for military deployment in support of border operations, $46.5 billion for a physical border wall. Everybody, I want to take you back to 2016. You know that we could not get any funding or any approval from the U.S. Senate back in 2016, 2017, 2018 because of Mitch McConnell and John McCain for the border wall? We have $46 billion, everybody. The border wall is funded. I know that we don't talk about build the wall much anymore because we have other problems because they're in the wall. The enemy is in the gates. Where back in 2016, they were still outside the gates. The enemy has come into the gates the last couple of years under Joe Biden. But the wall is fully funded. Unfortunately, the defense spending is still remaining $150 billion in new Department of Defense funding. I support our military. I think that we could probably be a little bit more cost efficient there, but it is what it is. So basically, we keep the tax cuts. We keep no tax on tips. We kept no tax on tips, right, Danny? Kept no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and we kept all the border stuff. That's a mandate bill. Now, we got to focus on this no food stamps for illegals, and they're working on the Medicaid stuff. The food stamps for illegals is worth overturning McDonough. We should not talk about Elizabeth McDonough on this show. No one should know who she is. She should just be a silent actor. She's a staffer. I have confidence they're going to figure this out. But the fact that we cannot restrict food stamp benefits for illegals because some technocrat Senate staffer says no, I don't know what form of government that is, but that's not a democracy. That's not a republic. Remember, she has exactly as much power as the Senate gives her. So they can change any rule by majority of vote, and I think it's time to override Elizabeth McDonough on that provision in particular.